plenty of guessing now as to any possible military response.
Iran's military is more than 500,000 strong, but its capabilities are somewhat limited because so much of its weapons and equipment is old and low quality. When it comes to ballistic missiles, though, Iran has the largest and most diverse arsenal in the Middle East, with more than 2,000 missiles capable of reaching targets anywhere in the region, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. That threat is somewhat limited, though, given that Iran has not developed the technology for those missiles to be reliably accurate.
Fox's Garrett Tenney. Many Republicans in Congress supporting that airstrike last week authorized by the president.
We were the subject of, I believe, over 10 or 11 rocket attacks just since October. It was made very clear to the Iranians what would happen, and to the IRGC that Soleimani headed, what would happen if a single American was killed. That happened. They crossed that line. And if you don't enforce the consequences, they won't believe it, and they'll continue to ratchet it up.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio appearing on CBS's Face the Nation. A deadly crash involving multiple vehicles, including a passenger bus on the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
As they were traveling on that bus, it was headed on a downhill grade, and the bus was unable to negotiate a corner. That bus went up an embankment, rolled over, and then was subsequently struck by 2 tractor trailers. Another tractor trailer came and collided with those 2 tractor trailers, and there was another passenger car that was also involved in this crash.
Pennsylvania State Police spokesman Stephen Lumani, at least 5 people have died, another 60 or more have been injured. America is listening to Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
One of 2 prison escapees recaptured in Mississippi.
1 down, 1 to go. The Mississippi Department of Corrections tweeted Sunday morning that David May, one of 2 prisoners to break out of the state pen at Parchman early Saturday, has been caught. The 42-year-old May is a lifer following a pair of aggravated assault convictions. But they're still searching for Dillian Williams. The 27-year-old's doing 40 years on burglary and assault charges. Meanwhile, Mississippi corrections officials have put all prison facilities statewide on lockdown in the wake of what's been a violent week in which 5 inmates have died. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison committing another $1.4 billion to recovery efforts after wildfires have charred an area in that country twice the size of the state of Maryland. At least 24 people have been killed. 2 more are missing. Cooler temperatures on Monday are helping the firefighting efforts. 2020 starting off with The Force, still topping the movie box office.
Star Wars Rise of Skywalker will mark a record 7th $1 billion release for Disney in 2019. Jumanji, The Next Level, is number 2, adding $26.5 million in its 4th week. Number 3, Little Women. It's grossed $80 million worldwide in 2 weeks.
My girls have a way of getting into mischief.
Well, so do I. This is Meg, Amy, Beth, and Joe.
This week's only new release, The Grudge, was a reboot of the 2004 horror film.
Why did you never go into that place?
Something never felt right about it.
The movie cost $10 million to make.
That's Fox's Debbie Hanley. New rules taking effect on Monday for U.S. tech companies that build artificial intelligence software for analyzing satellite imagery. Those firms now facing new restrictions on exporting their products to China and elsewhere. The Commerce Department tightening up exports that could give the U.S. a significant military or intelligence advantage. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Live the balanced lifestyle. Take Care Insurance offers proven wellness and fitness programs to encourage individuals and families to live a healthy, balanced lifestyle through preventative care, being active, eating right, relaxing and unwinding, and being socially connected. They have the island's largest offering of free fitness classes and health education programs for all ages. Join the movement. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram or visit takecareasia.com to learn more.
It's hard to believe, but Security Title is 20 years old. Reaching this milestone is a clear testament to the hard work of our employees, who are as passionate about our work as we are about our community. We are most grateful for the realtors, lenders, attorneys, investors, and the buyers and sellers we serve. They are the reason our doors have been open for 20 years. Security Title looks back with gratitude for the past 20 years and looks forward with optimism to the next 20. Thank you, Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how we start Tall Tales every day, every week, every decade. Yeah, we... Tall Tales is a champion of individual personal rights as reflected in the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution, the second of which deals with bearing arms. So here we are back again. And as I mentioned last week, the real Joe Cruz has a tremendous amount of seniority on this program. He has been the producer of Tall Tales all year.
Absolutely, sir.
Congratulations for your longevity, real Joe.
I'm happy
Cruz.
to be here.
Okay. All right, so I've got something here that I want to read into the record about the Tall Tales, about the Second Amendment. This is from the Bearing Arms website, Tom Knighton, and here's the headline itself is priceless. Washington Post has to smack Pelosi down on anti-gun remarks. So if you're a Democrat and the WAPO is smacking you down on your position on gun rights, you got a problem. Even the Democrats don't like you. As a Democrat, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi doesn't usually get a lot of guff from the media. She can pretty much do and say whatever she wants, but only to a point. At some point, perhaps the point, even the media has to call her on her BS. In their feeble attempt to appear unbiased, some comments are so egregious that they can't look away any longer, especially when it's a repeated flub. And here's a quote from Accuracy in Media. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi repeated use of a bogus claim of gun deaths of children throughout the year has earned her 4 Pinocchios by the Washington Post fact checker. Now, if you're not familiar with the Washington Post fact checker, it's kind of WAPO's version of Snopes. They take statements that people make in public and determine whether or not they're true. And if they're not true, then WAPO will award a Pinocchio. Now, you'll probably remember when you were young, real Joe Cruz, if one of your childhood buddies was caught in a lie, his friends would say, liar, liar, pants on fire.
Yes, they would.
Nose as long as a telephone wire. So Pinocchio was that mythical character. He had a long nose. And the more he lied, the longer his nose got. So Pinocchio pictures of the nose is even bigger than mine. So Nancy got 4 Pinocchios on her statement about child gun deaths. The fact checker was alerted by a reader who found the figures Pelosi was citing, that 47% of gun violence deaths in the U.S. were teenagers or younger. Here's a quote. In the 266 days since we sent this bill, about 25,000 people have died from gun violence in our country. 47% of them teenagers or children younger than that. Now, a spokesperson, not a spokesman or a spokeswoman, but a spokesperson for Pelosi argues that she misspoke and that it was 47 children killed per day, citing a Brady study. Of course, this is a huge difference. Yet if we're honest with ourselves, an understandable one, people do screw up from time to time, especially when they're used to talking about percentages or especially when they're Joe Biden. I just added that myself. However, it seems that even that information is wrong. Connolly told the Post that the statistic was drawn from a study by the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, which averaged 5 years of data, 2012 through 2016, from the Centers for Disease Control. But Brady's 5-year data indicate that 7.3% of the people in the United States who die every day because of firearms are 19 and younger. The number killed is 7 a day. In terms of people being shot, teenagers and young children account for about 14% of the total, not 49%. Even the most charitable interpretations of Pelosi's comments, however, have to recognize the difference between 7 and 47. Nancy would probably tell you, oh, that's just a rounding error. Further, as the fact checker found, she repeated this number over and over again. In other words, she's been pushing this false information for some time. She's gotten away with it because no one at the WAPO wanted to confront her on it. It wasn't until she flubbed up and said 47% that even the WAPO couldn't look away. Here's the problem, though. How many other people are spouting facts that aren't even related to the studies they're citing and are getting away with it? The fact checkers aren't checking the facts, all the facts. In fairness, that's a tall order. And I get that they can't do everything. Yet we also see these same fact checkers swooping in to check whether President Trump actually gave a medal to a dog. That they had time for. Anti-gunners are constantly spouting supposed facts, and we know good and well that they're bull. Of course, they're typically spouting bogus studies or citing outfits using definitions that support their agendas rather than anything unbiased. But Pelosi had been saying this exact thing for a while, and no one called her on it. No one at all. And the media wonders why we don't take them seriously anymore. I don't take WAPO seriously. And, one of the better signs of unreliability is for someone to say, I saw this in the New York Times. Yeah. Okay, so much for the Second Amendment. Let's go from there straight to Zemi Ikotny. As you well remember, this is that portion of the program where I chide the Daily News for not running local editorials. I take a look at the Post or editorial, and if it's reasonably correct on its theory, generally free from error, often and hard-hitting and edgy, that's the real test, the Post often waltzes away with a blue star. Well, today, as usual, the Daily News ran a column from, let's see, where's this one from? Of the USA Today editorial board. Yeah. I think it's wonderful that as busy as they must be, the folks back there at the USA editorial board, somewhere in Northern Virginia, takes the time to write an editorial for our little daily newspaper every day. You know, you think in terms, it's a big world and all these big corporations. USA Today, I think, now is the biggest newspaper corporation in the United States, if not the whole world. And yet, that editorial board takes time to write an editorial just for us every day. That's never anything about us, never any local issues, but anyhow. So today, it's in 2020, their resolutions. And it's kind of funny if you know, before you wrap the fish in it and throw it all in the trash, you might want to take a look just for a chuckle. But since we're not going to spend any time with that, I thought I would go to a piece that Lee Weber wrote for the other paper, because it ties into something I've talked about a couple of times here, neo-Marxism and the Frankfurt School. So here's what Lee Weber says. Having surgery forces one to slow down and take a look around. It also allows for time to do more reading. A close friend shared a paper, quote, The Threat of Tribalism by Amy Chua and Jed Rubenfeld. I think Amy Chua is the lady who wrote that interesting book, Tiger Moms. Very interesting writer. Both of these two, Amy and Jed, are Yale law professors. Their book centers on the U.S. Constitution, its flaws and its strengths. Now, unfortunately, and Lee didn't have anything to do with this, because the mechanics of a newspaper are that the copywriter writes the headlines for the story, and the headline has to arguably have something to do with the story and fit into the news hole where the story will go. Oftentimes, the headline is completely wrong, and this is no different. The headline on this editorial or on this op-ed piece is, The Constitution is a powerful living document. I wouldn't be surprised if when Lee Weber saw this, he poured his coffee all over it this morning. You know, people, constitutionalists, folks like those who believe in the U.S. Constitution out there in our international radio listening audience say, no, the Constitution is not a living document. We want to go back to what it said at the very beginning and adhere to the principles that the founders delineated in that Constitution, believing that there are some truths that are eternal. Now, the folks on the other side, the lefties, the liberals, the Democrats, will say, oh, no, it's a living document. Although, you know, the founders did really well when they drafted it up in 1781. We're so much smarter now and so much better at what we do and so much more scientific that we can come up with really better ideas than what they came up with. So we have to read these things into the Constitution because it's too hard to amend. And that's how Supreme Court was able to read into the United States Constitution a right of privacy, which your search and replace will never find if you run it through the Constitution. And based on that right of privacy, they decided that a Texas law outlawing buggery was unconstitutional. And they carried it forward into the Obergefell case and found that Herman and Henry had a constitutional right to, quote, get married. It's all part of the right of privacy that they found in the Constitution. So as far as I'm concerned, and the rule on tall tales is the Constitution is not a living document. It's a powerful document, but it's not a living document. So bad on you, copywriter at the Post who wrote that. Anyhow, the letter is quite good, notwithstanding the erroneous headline. And Lee Weber goes on to say, for me, the Constitution is a work of art and an amazing and powerful document. As Nicholas Young of London said about when as a nation we pulled away from Great Britain, quote, what country in its right mind would want to leave the world's largest trading bloc and risk financial ruin by going it alone without a deal? What country attempting to hold together a union of disparate political entities would risk the union when many of its inhabitants do not support the breakup in the first place? What country's leaders would be prepared to take a reckless leap into the unknown in the illusory hope of a brighter, more prosperous future free from outside interference? The answer, of course, the United States in 1776. They must have been insane. Our Constitution is a document that was designed to address the partisanship in our nation, the same type of partisanship that turned Americans, even Guamanians, against one another today. In the beginning, the Constitution brought people of many different races, ethnicities, religions, and general beliefs to live in a country under a banner of ideas, according to the two professors. I know of no other country in the world that allows or has allowed its citizens the latitude of speech, action, or belief that the Constitution gives us. The tenets of the Constitution were once taught in schools across the nation and in the territories of the United States. It demonstrated that while people were different, their common thread was being American. Well, unfortunately, we don't do that in the schools anymore. We're woke. The schools are woke now. And in most cases, unbeknownst to them, have picked up the Frankfurt School curriculum and have become the distributors of neo-Marxism. And I want to go back to something here. The tenets of the Constitution were once taught in schools. Now I'll go to a quote from Herbert Marcuse, who I've touched upon a couple of times as being one of the patron saints, quote unquote, of neo-Marxism, a charter member of the Frankfurt School. And here's what he said. Surely no government can be expected to foster its own subversion. But in a democracy, such right is vested in the people, that is, the majority of the people. This means that the ways should not be blocked on which a subversive majority could develop. And if they are blocked by organized repression and indoctrination, their reopening may require apparently undemocratic means. They would include the withdrawal of toleration of speech and assembly from groups and movements that promote aggressive policies, armament, chauvinism, discrimination on the grounds of race, religion, or that oppose the extension of public services, Social Security, Medicare, etc. Well, this is thick reading, but it really tells you what's going on right now. And that is this. The way the United States Constitution is set up, it enables the subversion of our own government with the First Amendment's freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. And what Marcuse is saying is we need to use these things. And in the process, we're going to have to suppress speech. We'll allow speech that favors our radical views. But stuff like Klitzkie reads on Tall Tales, we got to go out of our way to try to suppress that. He didn't say that. But if he were around today, you can darn sure bet he would. So, Lee Weber, right on point, a nice article, Lee, a good editorial, and a very interesting way for me to, once again, bring the conversation back to neo-Marxism and the Frankfurt School and a means by which we can decipher what's going on in our island and in the United States, the hollowing out of the universities, the redefining of curricula in universities so that you can be sure that any course that any university offers for which the final word in the course name is studies is critical studies, neo-Marxism, tear down the government as we know it. Okay, so much for the Daily News and Lee Weber. Let's go to the Post. And Post says, we owe our gratitude to Guam's war survivors, victims. Some of Guam's senators had their moment on Friday morning. Wow. Some shedding tears. Oh. As they took their turn speaking during the ceremony for the signing of Bill 181 into law. Some of our senators had their moment on Friday, some shedding tears. Yeah, and I've read a little bit about actors' schools and things like that, you know, how to become a professional actor. And one of the things a good professional actor is able to do is to cry on cue. You know, I don't know exactly how to do that. I never tried to learn. But, you know, if you're a good actor and the part calls for you to cry, when you get to that part of the scene, you got to start crying. Whether you feel like crying or not, whether you're sad, you got to be able to cry. Because for an actor, sometimes it makes the scene very realistic. You know, when the little girl finds out that her father was killed in the war. Yeah. Makes the scene very real. Now let's see if I had one of those slouchy hats like the real Joe Cruz wears to work sometimes, and a chair, a camp chair that said director on the back, and I were directing this dog and pony show that happened on Friday morning, right? So I would have a sign that I would hold up that said tears, you know, at just the right time. So I would, during the time that the governor is talking about the suffering of the Manamco, I would hold up this sign that said tears. And how would it sound, real Joe Cruz? And this would be the opportunity for the senators and residents to shed tears, hoping that the camera will zoom in on them. And that the Manamco president would duly note the shedded tears. Yeah. The new law would pay reparations to victims of Japanese atrocities on Guam in World War II using local funds and some from the federal government. Wrong. That is dead wrong, Post, and that's going to cost you your blue star. I'll explain when I get to the end, when I finish talking about the theatrics of the senators, in which he did a really nice job on. As war survivors gathered around the governor's conference room, some of the senators thought it important to use the microphone for as long as they could with the audience of nearly 24 or so war survivors and the Guam media. We wish that the microphone had been given to the war survivors instead. Well, that's a good thought over there at the Post editorial boardroom. But war survivors will always be war survivors. They don't have to run for re-election or another office, governor, Washington rep, whatever. We wish the microphone had been given to the war survivors instead. They're the ones who've been waiting for too long. They're the ones who need to know how the process for the payments will unfold. The war survivors and the editors at the Post both need to know. They're the ones who ought to be heard because they don't have much time left. Yeah, now if you were born, if you were alive during World War II, buddy, your days are numbered. Yeah, you got a really good chance of running the clock out here. The passage of local war reparations legislation was a race between delegates and Nicholas, separate efforts in Congress. Governor Lou Leon Guerrero said with her signature on Bill 181 that between $13 million and $14 million in local funding has been set aside to pay claims. Now, where did that money come from? I guess this would be what's left over after the deficit reduction. Well, the U.S. Treasury has about $23 million for a total of $37 million. No, it's not a total of $37 million. You know, the lose 13 or 14 is part of the 23. Wow. Post, how did you get this so wrong? Then going on, another quote for Lou. The article didn't say that Lou was one of the town criers. Roughly, we're looking at about anywhere from $33 million to $40 million in obligations to our Manamku, the governor added. But they're not our obligations. They're obligations from the Section 30 funds that Madeline Berdallo dedicated to the World War II Loyalty Recognition Act. They're not funds that are going to come from our revenue. And back to the editorial. However, reparations are eventually paid, let's not make it about who gets credit for it. Hello? That's all it's been about from the beginning. Madeline wanted to take the credit for it. She wanted the credit so badly that when she screwed up, she kept it to herself through the election. She didn't come forward and say, yeah, my bill passed, but it's flawed and no checks can be paid out until remedial legislation passes. But vote for me anyhow. She didn't say that. No, she campaigned on the basis that, well, I got this war reparations bill through, and she said this, it uses Section 30 funds. But what my plan was, I wanted the Section 30 funds just to be a placeholder. I wanted the bill to pass, and then I'll go out and find some other funds to actually pay the war reparations. What did P.T. Barnum say?
I'm not sure, sir.
P.T. Barnum, it wasn't...
The circus guy?
I beg your pardon, the circus guy.
Yeah.
He said there's a fool born every minute.
Ah.
Yeah. And if he was guilty of anything, I think he was underestimating. Probably a fool born every 10 seconds.
Well, if there's a fool born every minute, sir, I'm the man of the hour.
Well, glad you recognize your talents there, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. Yeah, on the Real Joe Cruz's stunning revelation, let's break for a short period of time here.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, the editorial goes on to say they, meaning Imanamco, need to know exactly when and how the payments will be made, who will be prioritized, and what will happen to those who didn't make the deadline to file claims. Well, a good way for that to happen would be for the Guam Daily Post to run a factually accurate article on answering all those questions and not go out there and put wrong mistakes in the editorial, which is what you did today, Guam Daily Post. The final the final paragraph of the editorial, a lot of useful information is needed to help the Manamku. What we don't need is our public servants grandstanding to earn brownie points. And that's exactly what they've been doing. Tina and Lou were going to have these checks in the hands of the old folks by Liberation Day. And they kept they get this drum out, this toy drum out, and beat it, right? And a lot of people, oh, listen to the drum. Oh, okay. Then they put the drum away for about 6 weeks, and they get it out and start beating it again. And people will think, wow, they're really working hard to get that money for the Manamku. But of course they weren't. What they were doing is working hard, trying to steal the thunder for Michael St. Nicholas, which I'll get into a little bit more later on. So they called that right. And they really called the senators on their theatrics. And basically they're capitalizing on the misfortune of the Manamku with their tears and hogging the microphone and the whole thing. So that's Blue Star material right there. But when you screw up like this, Lou Leon Guerrero said with her signature on Bill 181 that between 13 and 14 million in local funding has been set aside to pay claims, while the U.S. Treasury has about 23 million for a total of 37 million. When you screw up like that, you not only don't get the Blue Star, this is what you get. A D. And the only reason I gave you a D instead of an F is because of the good parts of your editorial. But an editorial, in order to get a Blue Star, has got to be all good. Are you listening, Mark? Mark cautioned me quite some time ago. If somebody doesn't rate the Blue Star, don't help them. Don't soften it up. Don't make it too easy. Don't cheapen the Blue Star. So that's exactly where we're coming from on that one today, Mark. No Blue Star for the Post today. Let me see what I got here in Facebook. Boy, not so many folks have checked into Facebook. Okay, so from there, we go to the card. And this is what I've got on the card for today. Lou and Tina versus the news cycle. This was previously on the calendar as Lou versus the Manamku. And then we've got Lou and Josh versus Festpac. And then we're back to Antonio Garamchi versus y'all. But of course, I'm going to start out with Christmas torts for the 2019 listing of the holidays. Some people may prefer jail to get away from Christmas. Cameron Lewis Bond was arrested last year after allegedly going on a crime spree during which he burned Christmas decorations, including an outdoor snowman. Perhaps he misheard the Frozen lyrics, which refer to, "Do you want to build a snowman?" Santa can get ornery during the holidays, especially gangster-like Santas. In Russia, families watched this week as two St. Nics wailed on each other in a rolling, not-so-jolly rumble. One was heard exclaiming that, "This is my territory," and police believe organized gangs involved in a mafia-style territorial dispute. That's from Russia. Yeah, Nigavaru Paruski. Okay, so we'll come back to Christmas torch tomorrow. And so I have to give credit where credit is due. And that is that the Bill 181 turned on to be more successful than Lou, Josh, and Tina could have hoped for in their wildest dreams. I have both of the Saturday newspapers here. Here is the Daily News, Saturday's Daily News. $14 million to pay living war survivors. And the Post, $37 million war reparations closer getting paid. Now, they're both wrong, but the Post is wronger than the Daily News. And we look at some of the content here. On page 3 of the Post, we've got Cynthia Terlahi, Maria Babauta, Diana Manos and Nicholas, Isabel Duenas, Ken Taidenko, Concepcion Matthews, Selena Gonzalez, Amparo Gumatauto Garcia. And here's some of their quotes. Some of the survivors of World War II voiced their reactions to the signing into law Friday of local legislation that would pay almost $37 million in war reparations. Wrong! Here are the comments. Amparo Garcia, I feel very good. I'm going to upgrade my house. Ken Taidenko, it's not a matter of the compensation. It's a matter of recognizing the hardship we had to go through. I agree with that, Mr. Taidenko, and it's unfortunate that Lou and Tina are putting you through some more hardship. Selena Gonzalez, this is my happiest moment. I cannot wait for the check to be sent to me. Well, the check is not going to be sent to you until Michael St. Nicholas's bill is passed by the Senate and signed into law by the President of the United States. Bill 181. I've been through this before, but Section 2, a new Article 13 is added to read, there is hereby established the 75th Guam War Liberation War Claims Fund, which will be administered by the Department of Administration. I don't know the guy. Do you know him, Real Joe Cruz?
I do not, sir.
I know who the director is,
no,
but I don't know the department. The purpose of this fund is to receive deposits to pay for certified claims to compensable Guam victims as defined in Section 1704C2 of Public Law 14328 by the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission as referenced in Section 1705. So, in other words, any money awarded by the Foreign Claims Commission can be deposited into this fund. Now, why would the Department of Treasury want to deposit funds into the 75th Guam Liberation War Claims Fund? And the answer is any funds transferred to this account shall be used only to award compensable Guam victims with certified claims by the Foreign Claims Commission certified and shall be consistent under a memorandum of agreement between the Department of Administration and the U.S. Department of Treasury. So what it means is this. It's a really poorly worded bill, but the government of Guam, the Department of Administration, is to enter into an agreement with the U.S. Treasury Department where the Treasury Department said agrees that it would reimburse the government of Guam for any claims paid out to claimants who were adjudicated by the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission. Okay? That's what it means. However, there won't be any claims paid out by the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission until San Nicolas's bill passes. Now, if Lou is trying to make people think that she is going to pay money out of that, pay local funds out of that fund on the hopes, keeping her fingers crossed that San Nicolas's 1135 is going to pass, and then Treasury will sign that memorandum. This isn't even smoke and mirrors. This is beyond wishful thinking. But that's the way they've presented it. So if it works, the Senate will pass San Nicolas's bill, the president will sign it, and the Treasury Department will start cutting checks. Now, if the Treasury Department goes along with what Lou wants to do, they will enter into an agreement that says we will reimburse money that you pay out, provided that the claimant signs their claim over to the government of Guam. An awful lot of ifs, and I suspect it's not going to be the way our national government is going to work. But it doesn't matter because Lou and Tina have already won. They've got their front page, great stories in both papers. The only bad thing is it was on a Saturday. And they brought the Madamku in. I think we also have some really nice statements from, there's a really nice picture on page 4 of the Daily News. Governor Luliana Guerrero was thanked by Speaker Tina Muñoz Barnes and other lawmakers as she addresses war survivors, their families, and others during the bill ceremony at Adelup on Friday. Governor Leon Guerrero later penned her signature to Bill 181, making it law and allowing the use of local funds to advance the payment to still living war survivors whose claims have been adjudicated. Well, that's a lot better. But that advance can only take place if that memorandum of agreement is entered into. I can't see a memorandum of agreement being entered into based on the possibility that San Nicolas's bill will pass. And by the way, this picture here, we've got Tina and Will and Pito and Kelly Titano Marsha Kelly Titano, what's her name?
You could mix it anyway, sir. It works every way.
Yeah. But and Amanda Shelton. Now, because of the angle of the picture, I can't tell which one of them is crying, and the caption of the picture doesn't let us know either. So come on, Daily News. You got to work on your visuals a little bit more here. You might have left out one of the really important parts of the story. Yeah, so congratulations, Lou and Tina. You made front page in both of the papers, and you got some really great coverage. Let's see. Here's the Daily News. Some of the statements. War survivor Isabel Duenas, who's turning 83 Sunday, said she's glad the bill was signed, even though it came too late for the many survivors who died without receiving compensation for their suffering. It's kind of getting late, but as long as they process it and it goes through, it's fine with us. So, you know, another really interesting thing here, you know, most people don't pay as much attention to this as I do. They don't actually get the statute out and look at it. They don't go to the net and look up the federal law. People tend to develop their reality on a basis of headlines. So when the Post runs a headline, $37 million war reparations, or $14 million to pay living war survivors, that's what's going to stick in people's minds, not to mention the electronic media coverage of such things. So let's take a short break and I'll come back and wrap this up.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so I've been peeking at Facebook here, but let me go through some of these comments here first, and then I'll go to Facebook. Isabel Duenas says it's getting kind of late, and she said she was 6 years old when the Japanese invaded Guam. She has two younger sisters, Diane St. Nicholas and Conception Matthews, watched as the governor signed the bill. The youngest, St. Nicholas, was born in a cave where they hid from the Japanese soldiers. My mom was very pregnant when we were looking for a shelter, Duenas said. That girl born in a cave on July 14, 1944, is now 75. She said she feels there are so many others who deserve to get war payments, but she's grateful for those who made the war claims payment bill happen. See what I mean? So when St. Nicholas's bill, if St. Nicholas bill becomes law, and these people actually get their check, a lot of them are going to remember these newspaper headlines and the statements of the girl who was born in a cave, and they're going to say, oh, I'm so glad that Governor Liu worked with Tina to get us these war claims. And actually, it's just bogus. Tina and Lou haven't done anything except, as St. Nicholas points out, perhaps created a problem. But they're right out there looking for, one thing the Post got right, they're right out there looking for brownie points. St. Nicholas goes on to say, I hope they and their families receive the money before they die. Well, they're probably not going to receive it after they die. Another war survivor, Maria Hale, 82, said she's happy the bill is law. Yeah. Her daughter, Jacqueline, was too late for their other family members, felt it was too late for their other family members who suffered during the war, but are no longer with them. So, as I said, Lou and Tina were successful probably beyond their wildest dreams, because it's firmly imprinted in people's minds that when the war claims checks come, if they come, oh, thank goodness for Governor Liu and Tina. I remember when we went down to the governor's office, and I saw Governor Lou sign that bill, and all the Manamco were there, and the senators were there too. Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, main author of Bill 181, apologized to war survivors that the legislation didn't come soon enough. I'm going to borrow Tina's most famous line since she's been in politics. You remember the other day I mentioned that that people in public life are often remembered for a particular line or statement or speech or something like that. Fulton, Missouri, 1944, as you were 1947. From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, a vast iron curtain has descended over Europe. Winston Churchill. Yeah. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. John Kennedy, 1961. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Ronald Reagan. And then we had Tina Rose Munya Barnes with her most famous political speech. Give me a break! Right up there with Churchill and Roosevelt and the rest of them, right? So I'm going to borrow that here. Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, main author of Bill 181, apologized to war survivors that the legislation didn't come soon enough. Give me a break! The Speaker's office said the source of funding for the local war claims payment is lapsed funds from fiscal 2019 and fiscal 2020 budget subject to the governor's transfer authority. There goes our deficit reduction. The rest of the more than 3,650 plus war claims will be paid once Mike San Nicolas's bill becomes the law, the governor said. I don't think that's going to happen. That congressional bill awaiting a Senate vote seeks to fix a technical error in a 2016 federal law so the Treasury can start releasing payments to those with adjudicated war claims. Now, nobody wants to go back and talk about that memorandum and what the bill implies it's going to talk about. The governor said the federal H.R. 1365 enacted will repay Gov Guam for local funds used to pay in advance the war claims of those still living war survivors. Okay, if that memorandum of agreement is signed. We set aside about $14 million. The U.S. Treasury has $23 million. So that's a total of $37 million roughly. Well, I'll give the governor really good credit for knowing how to add two-column numbers. But what does that figure have to do with anything? Nothing. We're looking at about $33 million to $40 million obligation to our Manamku. In other words, when all of the claims, how many claims were there? When all 3,650 claims have been adjudicated, assuming they're all going to be granted, then we're talking about $33 million to $40 million. But it's all going to come from our Section 30 money. If that memorandum of agreement is signed, it might mean that the government of Guam could issue the checks a couple weeks early and get reimbursed by the Treasury. But I think that's a real long shot. Not worth calling the oldsters into the governor's conference room for a mutual crying session. Okay, well, we're coming up on that big halftime show we have every day, so we'll break for the show and then we'll come back and I'll probably finish this up and go to the next item on the card, which is Lou and Josh versus Festbeck.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Possible retaliation. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. A vow of revenge coming from an Iranian general who's replacing a military leader killed last week by a U.S. drone strike in Iraq. Esmail Ghani's threat coming as Tehran says it's abandoning the remaining limits of the 2015 nuclear deal. Many Democrats still angry about not being consulted before that strike.
There is usually a congressional consulting process. It's both constitutionally required, but it's also important because, one, you potentially get members of Congress to buy in ahead of time, and two, they may ask that hard question that's not asked in an insular group.
Virginia Senator Mark Warner on NBC's Meet the Press. This coming as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is urging House Democrats to swiftly rebuke President Trump. The president, by the way, on Sunday saying cultural sites in Iran can be targeted if Iran retaliates. Meantime, 3 U.S. personnel are dead after al-Shabaab extremists overrun a military base used by U.S. counter-terror forces in Kenya. 5 attackers were killed before the rest were repelled. A multi-vehicle turnpike crash in Pennsylvania, killing at least 5.
Police say the crash injured dozens of people. Some are listed as critical, but the injuries don't seem to be life-threatening. State Police spokesman Stephen Lamani says it started when the bus lost control on a curve.
That bus went up an embankment, rolled over, and then was subsequently struck by 2 tractor trailers. Another tractor trailer came and collided with those 2 tractor trailers.
Another car was also involved. Lamani says the bus was headed from New Jersey to Ohio, and many of the passengers spoke foreign languages. The National Transportation Safety Board will investigate this crash. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Director Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood wins Best Comedy at Sunday night's Golden Globes. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
GRMC's Neuroscience and Neurology Department treats a wide spectrum of disorders associated with the nervous system, spine, and brain. Some of the more common disorders include seizures, epilepsy, dementia, sleep disorders, migraine, and stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC's neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and the finest neurological doctors. To make an appointment, contact GRMC Specialty Clinics at 645-5500.
Anticipation building for this week's impending trial against disgraced movie producer Harvey Weinstein.
The court will handle pre-trial matters and jury selection is expected to start Tuesday. This criminal trial could put the disgraced movie mogul behind bars for the rest of his life. This case comes more than 2 years after sexual assault allegations emerged against him and helped power the Me Too movement. And this is the only criminal case to arise from dozens of allegations made against 67-year-old Weinstein. In this trial, he's accused of raping a woman in a Manhattan hotel room in 2013 and performing a forcible sex act on a different woman in 2006. Weinstein faces predatory sexual assault charges that carry a life sentence.
Fox's Christina Coleman in Los Angeles, that trial taking place in New York City. Officials in Hong Kong activating a newly created serious response level, fearing the spread of a mysterious infectious disease that may have been brought back by visitors to a city in mainland China. 8 possible cases so far in Hong Kong. The current outbreak reviving memories there of a 2002 epidemic that killed over 700 people in mainland China, Hong Kong, and elsewhere. Get ready for another new Oreo flavor.
It's the kind of thing that might make a dietitian wince. Oreos for breakfast to satisfy that coffee craving. America's favorite cookie will be launching a coffee-inspired tiramisu flavor. The newest variety will come with not 1 but 2 layers of cream, one white, the other brown, sandwiched between the chocolate cookies. One of those fillings will aim to satisfy coffee and espresso lovers. It's set to be introduced in April, so coffee lovers will just have to wait until spring. Until then, chocolate marshmallow and caramel coconut flavors are reportedly hitting the shelves this month. Sal Giangrasso, Fox News.
NFL playoffs on Sunday in the NFC. Minnesota advancing with a win at New Orleans. Seattle on the road gets past Philadelphia. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so here we are after the big halftime show that we have every day at 1700 here in Tall Tales. The marching band, the cheerleaders, the drill team, the synchronized card section, and the grandstand, etc. Means we're now in the second half of Tall Tales, and I'm going to wrap up on Lou and Tina versus the news cycle here in a few minutes and go on to the rest of the card. Reading this Daily News article, the governor said we set aside close to $14 million. The U.S. Treasury has $23 million, so that's a total of $37 million roughly. And once again, I give the governor really a lot of credit for her ability to add two numbers. But obviously, if you understand what's going on, the $14 million is part of the $23 million. It's not in addition to the $23 million. Adelup sent the draft memorandum to Treasury, and the governor said she expects Treasury to send it back signed next week. Well, that'll be interesting. The war claims measure, now Public Law 3561, takes effect upon the execution of that memorandum. It sets out the administrative process that must be adhered to for GovGuam to pay awards and get reimbursed. The governor told war survivors and their families to keep the documents they received from the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission and to wait for a letter from GovGuam for instructions. War survivors will need to sign a consent form to allow GovGuam to know the status of their claims and the amount owed. The commission issued final decisions about 1,500 war claims, but it's not publicly known how many of those are for still living war survivors. Well, I think I know all of them, because my understanding is that the the claims based on having someone who died during the occupation will be adjudicated after those dealing with people who were alive when the bill passed in 2016 that lived through the Japanese occupation. All of the federal commission's final decisions so far state that the claimants are entitled to receive 10 or 12. $25,000 each for the harm that the war caused. The maximum amount that can be paid is $25,000, and that, of course, would be for someone who died during the Japanese occupation. So this item is listed on the card as Lou and Tina versus the news cycle. The news cycle. So this is what that means. You know, if you want to get the maximum public relations benefit from something that you do, there are some things that you can do that help. Much better to break a story on Monday than on Friday. If you do it on Monday and you've planned it well and you've got to follow up for Tuesday or Wednesday, you have a good chance of controlling the news cycle for a whole week. Well, it wasn't quite available for Lou because she wanted to hold on to it until the 10th day and sign the bill on the 10th day, a little more dramatic that way, and gave her a chance to squeeze a few more stories out of it. So she had the obligatory audience of old folks at the governor's conference room, the tears, the heartfelt statements, etc. And it worked really, really well because she controlled the news media on Saturday. Now, here we are still talking about it on Monday, and it's going to be the electronic news tonight. The TV stations will have picked up Saturday's news and will run with it tonight. And if Lou's lucky, she'll be able to squeeze a little bit more tomorrow and Wednesday. This is very important because what is happening this afternoon, in fact, what probably just ended while I was going through this, Michael San Nicolas's address to the legislature, which is a news event of itself, of its own. So one of the things that you could do if you care about public relations is if there is a news story coming along and you break it, you have the opportunity to frame the story yourself. If somebody else breaks it, then you're reacting to somebody else's framing. So Michael San Nicolas is going to have to come along almost like the guy that got fired in a department store for telling the 5-year-old kid that there was no Santa Claus. Michael San Nicolas, if he wants to go there, in his speech this afternoon is going to have to say, or he should have said, there is no Santa Claus here. What Lou did is not going to put any money in anybody's pocket. No money goes in anybody's pocket until my bill becomes law. And when my bill becomes law, you don't need Lou's bill. That's what Michael San Nicolas is going to have to say. And all of these poor folks who, you know, the ones that were quoted at the governor's, oh, it took so long, but I'm so glad it's finally here. Or Amparo Garcia, I'm going to add a room to my house. So it's sort of like, you know, kid, I know you sent your wish list off to Santa Claus, and I know you asked Santa Claus for a new bicycle, and I know you have a lot of faith in Santa Claus, but let me acquaint you with the reality here. There ain't no Santa Claus. That's the corner that Lou and Tina have backed Michael San Nicolas into. He has to be very, very careful how he phrases this, or he is going to break the hearts of some of these old folks who've had enough. So Lou and Tina timed it very well. They orchestrated it very well. They got very good media out of it. They got some good tears out of the senators. I don't know how they were able to do that, but it obviously worked. So I speculate here a little bit. The director of communications at Adelup is Janella Carrera. And ordinarily, we would expect the director of communications to have planned this out. Again, public relations depends on good planning. Would have been planned out from way back when Lou first introduced the bill. These are the steps that we're going to take. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves so that we get credit when the money starts coming out. However, given what has happened since the Leon Guerrero administration has been installed, and given the fact that Carlo Branch was recruited from the legislature to come over to the governor's office to be a policy analyst, I am only going to speculate that this is more of a Carlo Branch production than a Janela Carrera production. But anyhow, credit where credit's due. It worked really well for you guys. You know, if you guys were in the garment business, you could go around to all the butcher shops and collect all of the sow's ears that the butcher cuts off the pigs as he butchers them, and take all of those sow's ears back to your shop and make them into silk purses, because that's what you've done here. Congratulations, Lou and Tina. Okay, so put this aside. Save these two save these two papers for the archives, and go on to the next item in the card. Oh yeah, here's Friday's headline: Healing Old Wounds, Local War Claims Bill now becomes law. 14 million ready for... Anyhow. So, now we go on to Lou and Josh versus FESPAC. And once again, here they are, beginning of the week, first day of the week, with a comprehensive story on a public safety plan. Governor Lou Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Josh announced a public safety plan on Monday that rests on 4 tenets: more police officers, fighting addiction, ending repeat crime, and addressing negligent parents. The Safer Guam initiative follows a series of island-wide public safety meetings held by the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration to field residents' concerns. In the past decade alone, here's a quote, in the past decade alone, crimes like aggravated assault, rape, robbery, and theft increased by 41%. Drug-related crime rose, and yet the number of uniformed police officers dropped 25% when compared to 2015, Tenorio said. While politicians bickered about what should be done and how we should pay for it, the system built to protect us drowned under a rising tide of crime. Instead of working together, pointing fingers became more important than solving problems. The plan offers 10 changes across the island. Notable proposals include hiring 100 police officers, no longer allowing parole for violent and sex offenders, establishing a legal misdemeanor for parents over lack of care of their minor children, recruiting addiction treatment specialists, and stopping the sale of alcohol between midnight and 2 p.m. So, once again now, I keep coming back to this. This is what I want to see from our government. I would like to see an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. Now, if we could do that, as I said in the Sunday news, there might be a little bit of quibbling about what basic government services are, but not much. But if we were to do that, we wouldn't be sitting here agonizing over this plan. So you start out, the administration commits to adding 100 new police officers by the end of 2020. At the beginning of the Leon Guerrero administration, GPD had 289, the lowest in a decade, according to the governor. Using her budgetary authority, the governor has directed that the Department of Administration, GPD, and the governor's fiscal team accomplish the goal of recruiting, training, and deploying 100 new police officers by the end of the year. Basic services? Yeah. In accordance with the rule of law? Well, it's in accordance with the rule of law if the governor's budgetary authority to direct the director of administration and the fiscal team to do that is legal. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. Now, next item, Jigo Precinct. The plan also aims to construct a Jigo police precinct and leverage federal funds to do it. No timeline was stated for the construction of a new precinct. Okay, establishing a police building, a police presence in Jigo. Effective, efficient government that provides basic services? Yeah, I'd say so. Jigo is a lot of people. It's the largest village. And right now, cops for Jigo have to come from Dadido. So probably a pretty good idea. No parole for violent criminal sex offenders. The administration plans to propose a legislative measure that eliminates parole for violent criminals and those who have been convicted of sex crimes. Okay. Does this cost us money? Yeah, a little bit. Having somebody on parole is cheaper than having them behind the bars. But she says this follows mounting concerns regarding parole board's decisions last year, including the granting of parole to repeat offenders. Okay. Victim notification for plea deals. The administration will require the Attorney General to demonstrate a clear and convincing effort to notify a victim before a plea deal is entered. Yeah, okay. Negligent parents. The administration hopes to hold negligent parents accountable. The governor referenced California, where it's a misdemeanor for a parent to fail to fulfill his or her duty to exercise reasonable care, supervision, and protection and control over their minor child. A parent, their, couldn't have said parents and their minor child? Well, I wonder if such a statute would be constitutional, but I suppose in a way it's worth a try. The governor also asked PBS Guam to produce a multicultural education campaign that includes the advice of culturally competent individuals. Now, what would a culturally competent individual be? A culturally competent individual. It will communicate our laws, teach parents where they can find help, and make clear their basic responsibilities and the consequences of failure. And then alcohol regulations. To address alcohol-related issues, the administration is proposing that alcohol not be sold at stores between midnight and 2 p.m. This won't apply to weekends, holidays, bars, or residents. Now, I can see the wisdom behind this, and I don't see it as strictly nanny state. But if you're going to do it, and this is where I can see the wisdom of it. I'm going to use a little autobiographical story here, okay, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. Well, the first time I ran for senator, the hot issue on the table was whether we should raise the legal age for drinking alcohol from 18 years old to 21 years old. And I went to a student forum at Simon Sanchez High School along with several other senators. And the question that, everybody got asked, what is your position on raising the alcohol drinking age from 18 to 21? And everybody there, see if you could predict what, or you could analyze what everybody said, Real Joe Cruz. No, leave it where it is. And, a lot of pandering to the youth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When it's my turn to answer, I said, no, I want to raise it to 21. And the girl had asked the question, why, Mr. Klitzkie? Why would you want to raise it to 21? And I said, simple reason. I was 18 once. And I saw a lot of heads shaking, and that was kind of the end of that. So, without going into any more autobiographical stories, if you're going to have a party where adult beverages are served, as a general rule, you plan it out a little bit. You plan the menu, you buy a bag of charcoal, you buy some, whatever it is you're going to cook, fish, meat, whatever, and you lay in some beer, and you get it early enough so that you can cool it down so that when your party starts at, what time, 7, Real Joe Cruz?
I believe so, sir.
Yeah. You got your beer there, and it's cold. And you plan ahead, so if you figure, man, we're probably going to be drinking here until after midnight, you buy enough beer to last you through midnight, right?
Yep.
When do you buy that beer? Probably the afternoon of the party, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ice it down, get it ready.
Yeah. Now, are there people who decide they need more beer at midnight? And what if we were to generalize, what would we say about people who think they need more beer at midnight?
I think they've had too much beer.
They probably already had more than what they really need, right? And it's an impulse purchase.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So they pull into a gas station, buy the beer, jump in the car, pop the tops of the cans, and as they're peeling off to wherever they're going, they're pulling down those beers. So if you're going to do it, Lou and Josh, midnight's too late. Too late. How about no beer after 7 o'clock at night? So no beer from, what do they say, between midnight and 2 p.m. So, yeah, so open your retail outlets 2 till 8. And this thing about weekends, that's the worst possible time. So that's when you need the tightest regulation. If you through your analysis, you've determined that drinking alcohol is a cause of crime and traffic accidents, and you think you can have an effect on that by limiting retail sales, that's my 2 cents worth on the subject. I can see the wisdom of limiting this to retail sales and not taverns, restaurants, etc. Makes a certain amount of sense. Okay, they want to recruit addiction treatment specialists. This is a mental health issue. Having the right mental health capabilities in our community, that comes within the realm of an effective, efficient government that provides basic services. School safety. The administration is aiming to utilize technology. Maybe they could just use technology to better enforce law and public safety. Guam Homeland Security will work with the Department of Education to assess and strategically place cameras in our schools. With these tools, we can capture vandals and prevent vandalism. Traffic enforcement. The administration will seek the passage of an automated island-wide traffic enforcement system. And I don't know exactly what they mean by that. I think they mean, at least in part, red light cameras. And if we had red light cameras, talk about culture, it would really have an impact on our culture, because our culture right now is a yellow light means only 5 more, step on the gas, and a red light means no more than 3 more vehicles through this intersection.
Yeah, if they have those cameras, I won't run red lights.
Yeah. Good call, Real Joe Cruz. And the deterrent effect of having those red light cameras, and people know that they're out there, it's going to have a dramatic effect on public safety. Now, it might mean more than that. So on its own or with the help of qualified private sector partner, GPD can keep our roads and intersections safer and allocate its manpower where it's most needed. Now, there could be more to it than that. You know, about 20 years ago, the feds gave us enough money to build a really elaborate system so that traffic signals could be synchronized. So if you started out at Anderson and you set yourself at the right speed, something like 33 miles an hour, you could make it all the way to Naval Station and never stop for a red light. Coordination of traffic signals, demand lights, etc. But that was blown away, I think, in Pung Sung Hwa, and it never really got off the ground, and we never were able to replace what got blown away. Okay, so we're coming up here on the seventh inning stretch, and then I'll finish this up, and then we're going to go back to Antonio Gramsci.
Want to grow your business? Start a new venture? Or stay ahead of the competition? You can. With Docomo Pacific Smart Business Solutions tailored to your specific needs and ambitions, you can do it all. Partner with a network with best-in-class network coverage, state-of-the-art communication platforms, and a team dedicated to providing you with premium support. Call 688-2677 to start your journey to success today. Docomo Pacific Business, delivering your future today.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Sometimes we simply need a simple reminder of the simple things we already know. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, a few simple ideas that can get 2020 off to a great and more simplified start.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for January. SoCal-style 2-pound surf and turf burrito. Tasty strips of certified Angus beef and succulent shrimp rolled into a flour tortilla with red rice, guacamole, cilantro lime sour cream sauce, salsa fresca and cheese. Served with spicy roasted chili salsa for only $17.95. Try it today. Available in Agana and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, seventh inning stretch. That means I got 2 more innings to go on this exciting educational episode of Tall Tales. So Lou's got one more item here on her crime prevention plan, digital screening at the port. In addition to better traffic technology, the administration hopes to install 100% digital screening of all containers entering the port. A public-private partnership can provide the Customs and Quarantine Agency with equipment, tools, personnel, and training to efficiently scan 100% of cargo entering our ports, the governor said. Well, yeah, that's true. And once again, it's a law enforcement item. That's an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. And then there's one more item that I'm going to add on the bottom here that somebody at Adelup forgot. FestPack. You know, all of these things that are in this list are going to cost money. Now, I don't know, I don't see any price tags here, but I have a sense that this, you could recruit a lot of addiction treatment specialists for $350,000, and you could buy a lot of cameras for the schools for $350,000, and you could probably buy quite a few red light cameras for $350,000. And you could probably do a lot of digital screening at the port for $350,000. But what are we going to what are we going to do with 300? We're going to send 100 people to go to Honolulu. So you can't have it both ways, Lou and Josh. You know, I suspect that other than the 100 that are going, and the dignitaries, of course, who must accompany the delegation, like Senator Titan O'Kelly Marsh, and the speaker's got to go as part of the delegation, and Lou and Josh, etc. Except for the dignitaries and the 100 folks, I suspect that nobody wants to spend the money to send people to Honolulu. Not $350,000 worth. Especially when you figure out why they're going. They're going to go to do all of the dances that Frank Rabone invented about 30 years ago. Now, a lot of the other Festpackers are going to be there doing their traditional dances from their pre-contact days, folks from Micronesia and Samoa, et cetera, not us. And we're going to go to the dances and go and do the dances that were invented 30 years ago, and we're going to spend $350,000 doing it by sending 100 people there. So this ought to be Adelup unveils public safety plan. Part of your public safety plan ought to include not wasting money on frills and stuff that maybe makes one or two people down at Adelup or one or two senators, makes their tummy feel warm, but doesn't do anything at all for the folks on Guam. Spend your money on stuff like this, on the basic government services that we're all looking for so hard. Okay, let's see. Gus Gisongas. Gus, I guess, is in Houston now, right? Gus, you went from Brownsville to Houston. Gus Gisongas, it's sad and disappointing of the events happening around the world. Africa, Iran, Hong Kong. It's bothersome, some people being killed in all these attacks. Yeah, that's true, Gus. Maybe we'll pick up on some of that for Tall Tales tomorrow. But for now, I'm going to go back to Antonio Gramsci, which we talked about before. And I'm going to start out here. Remember I mentioned Herbert Marcuse in the piece that I read from Lee Weber? So have you ever heard of Antonio Gramsci? How about Herbert Marcuse or the Frankfurt School? These names are probably meaningless to all but a small minority of scholars, academics, political theorists, and talk show hosts throughout the world. I just added talk show hosts in there myself. Yet Americans, and indeed all those who treasure the religion, culture, and history of Western civilization, should become acquainted with these names if they are to understand the forces that are currently tearing society apart. Marxism appeared on the scene in Europe in the mid-19th century. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels posited a thesis that capitalist society was doomed to demise as the proletariat, that is the working class, rose up to overthrow their oppressors, the bourgeoisie, the middle class of property owners. Marx and Engels saw world history through the prism of a perpetual class struggle between these two implacable enemies. Class struggle, sound familiar? Going all the way back, you remember the 1% folks that occupied that territory in New York, and all, the Antifa folks, and the Black Lives Matter folks, and the By Any Means Necessary gang. So Marx and Engels saw the world history through a prism of professional class struggle between these two implacable enemies. Marx predicted that socialist revolutions would spring out throughout the West as the proletariat overthrew the bourgeoisie and established dictatorships in the name of the people. Fortunately for us, but unfortunately for Marx, his prediction fell short. The socialist revolutions largely failed to materialize in Europe or America. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 arrived in Russia, vanguard of the East, and had as much to do with the tragic casualties and deprivations of World War I as anything to do with the wealth of the property classes. Subsequent communist revolutions attempted to replicate what Lenin achieved in Russia, be they in post-war Hungary under Bela Kun or Germany under Rosa Luxemburg, were either short-lived or failed altogether. Aside from Mao's communist takeover of mainland China in 1944, which again happened in the East, not the West, and again on the heels of a major destructive war, most communist successes in the post-World War II era occurred not as a result of a spontaneous uprising of the proletariat, but at the point of a bayonet. Communist regimes were forcibly imposed by Moscow on most of Central and Eastern Europe as an iron curtain descended from Stettin and darkened the continent for the next 40 years. The intellectual followers of Marx were disappointed. Their vision of a worldwide uprising against the property classes based on economics alone had not caught fire. And the last time we went through this, I mentioned that the theory was that the workers of the world would unite. One of the slogans of communism, workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. But when World War II came along, as World War I came along, the workers of the world did not unite. German workers could kill French workers, and Russian workers could kill German workers, and on and on. The workers of the world did not unite. They were very good at killing one another in the trenches of World War I. So it was time for a new strategy. These left-wing academics with names like Gramsci, Marcuse, Adorno, Horkheimer, Brecht collectively represented something called the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School, associated with the Institute for Social Research at Goethe University in Germany, was an assembly of political discontents and malcontents who determined that Marx had gotten it backwards. Instead of an economic revolution igniting a cultural revolution, they believed only a long march through the institutions of the West would achieve their communist objectives. A long march through the institutions of the West. To that end, they launched a broad-based attack on all the traditional institutions of Western society. The universities, the media, publishing, motion pictures, as well as the church and the family. Everything was fair game if it reflected the traditional Judeo-Christian values of existing society, from sexual mores to national sovereignty. The 60s, if you remember the 60s, if you're old enough to remember, just remember what happened to the 60s in light of that explanation. This wasn't something that a group of really neat young kids invented all by themselves. This was the product of neo-Marxism. To that end, they launched a broad-based attack on all the institutions of the Western society. According to cultural Marxists like Antonio Gramsci, a cultural hegemony of the capitalist class was using institutions like traditional marriage as an instrument of oppression. So if you're in a traditional marriage, that's an institution of oppression. What we have to do then is get rid of traditional marriage. Has that happened? Have we gotten rid of traditional marriage? Real Joe Cruz?
Happening.
It's already happened. Yeah, there's nothing traditional about Herman and Henry, having a ceremony and trading rings and having a party and everything like that and saying, we are each other's husbands. We are married. So traditional marriage as an instrument of oppression. So they've been very successful in that regard, not to mention the fact that so often now folks think it's cool to beget children and not even think about entering into marriage. Quite a difference from traditional Western society. Cultural hegemony of the working capitalist class was using institutions like traditional marriage as an instrument of oppression. Everyone was now a victim of the cultural oppressors. And of course, that's the name of the game now, victimhood. Everybody should try to be a victim of something, because you get free stuff if you do. Everyone was now a victim of these cultural oppressors: women, racial minorities, immigrants, homosexuals, Muslims. It was the rise of identity politics. How well we understand the rise of identity politics. Now the Democrats are moaning and groaning because they're the party of inclusion, and all of their top candidates are white folks. Well, maybe all but one. I probably shouldn't sell Pocahontas short. Yeah, because Harvard University, one of these institutions that has been thoroughly undermined by the Frankfurt School, listed Pocahontas as their first black or first color, as your first faculty member of color. And they use that for bragging rights. We have a faculty member in our law school who is a person of color. Everyone was now a victim of these cultural oppressors: women, racial minorities, immigrants, homosexuals, Muslims. It was the rise of identity politics embraced by today's Democrat Party that attempts to pit one group against another in order to achieve permanent political power. And it's working, isn't it? Yeah, we have right here on Guam, we have our separatists. So we want to, we're quite interested in how the local folks here, people who live on Guam, what their ideas about political status are. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come up with two rump political statuses and independence, and we're going to have a vote. But only people of one of the oppressed minorities get to vote. Everybody doesn't get to vote. Cultural hegemony and all. It was the rise of identity politics embraced by today's Democrat Party that attempts to pit one group against another in order to achieve permanent political power. As Gerald Warner wrote in Breitbart News, by the post-war era, the cultural Marxist program had a wide-reaching agenda of destruction. It aimed to destroy the family, denying the specific roles of mother and father, and advocating the teaching of sex and homosexuality to children. Does that happen? You better Hong Kong believe it. Mobilization of women as revolutionaries against men through aggressive feminism, large-scale immigration to abolish national identity, dependency on the state and state benefits, control and infantilization of the media. All the stuff that we're talking about on a daily basis. And it began right after World War II. And we're now seeing how well it has worked. Here, once again, credit where credit is due. Like I gave Lou and Tina credit for a great dog and pony show. You got to hand it to these cultural Marxists, they've been very, very successful to our detriment. Okay, we've got the we've got the
Call to the post.
yeah, call to the post coming up, and Carl wants to chime in on cultural Marxism. So we'll do the call to the post.
Hi, welcome to this ad for new Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. How do you want it?
Cheer Squad. Woo! Go Subway sliders starting at $1.99 each. Woo! Give me a ham and jack slider.
Ham and jack slider.
Give me an Italian spice slider.
Italian spice slider.
What's that spell?
It doesn't really spell anything.
New Subway sliders starting at $1.99 each. Go Sliders!
Subway, make it what you want.
The Points NFL Pick'em contest was a huge success. For the past several weeks, competitors have been giving their best guesses on weekly NFL football action, and it's been a lot of fun. Be sure and tune in Friday, January 10th, while we pretend to talk about sports for the grand prize winner reveal. The winner will be in studio to pick their choice of a brand new phone from GTA. Many thanks to all who participated in the contest, and especially to our sponsors, Current Guam and GTA.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So there we are. Call to the post, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. And who do I see walking around out on the racetrack looking for a seat in the bleachers? Our Carl.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah, can you find a seat there, our Carl?
Just barely. It's pretty packed.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's Tall Tales for you. So I'm going to finish this tomorrow, our Carl. There's still some really interesting points to make, but I'll let you jump in here at the end of the show, okay?
Sure, yeah. I saw a speech of an African, I think he's a teacher or professor, and he was talking about why so many African countries went socialist after independence from their colonizers. And what happened in many cases was that they went back to Western institutions and they picked up these Marxist ideas and brought them back. And of course, with all the anti-colonial talk, against their colonizers, which tended to be capitalist, there was this move toward moving away from that, toward socialism. They had actually, I think it was Lenin that had spoken and said that colonialism or capitalism was equivalent to colonialism. It was like neo-colonialism. And so that's why there's so much, economic poverty in Africa to this day. And the speaker said there's 41 countries in Africa, and only 2 of them have democratic elections. It has strongly swung in the direction of socialism. So that's just something I think to be aware of, that, with all this talk against America and capitalism and the military and Western civilization, that is being spread from academia through Guam, that the only logical direction when you have neo-Marxists at the core of the leadership is toward socialism. That is their nirvana. That is their heaven on earth. That is their ultimate destination. I don't think there's much talk about it at the moment because it's a little early in the game, I think. But that is ultimately where I see this all going.
Well, I think the usual approach is that you bash all of the European Western capitalist institutions and convince people that they really have a problem. And that opens up the field for something else that will be presented as better, the socialist utopia. And I've remarked before here on Tall Tales that what I see in the offing for the independentistas is the People's Republic of Guahan.
Yeah, and the ultimate example of this approach, this use of critical theory to criticize the existing society and culture in order to break it down and from the rubble build up a socialist utopia is Venezuela. The Marxist Hugo Chavez got in among the poor and the idealistic young and anyone else who would listen, and he was preaching this gospel of stating that what they had was hell on earth, when in fact what they had, due to the petroleum industry, was the highest wages in South America. And he got, unfortunately, enough people to listen to him and to buy into this idea. And we see the result today, people eating their pets, eating zoo animals, starvation, empty grocery shelves. But Maduro, the present Marxist president, has no interest in giving up power, despite the catastrophe around him. So it's just, it's a warning to us, these various examples in Africa and Venezuela, of what can potentially happen. I saw a recent documentary talking about Guam, and it stated that for the island this size in the Pacific, we are the most prosperous island of any similar size in the Pacific. So we really have quite a lot going for us despite our challenges.
True enough, Carl. True enough. So, there's another phenomenon here that goes along with neo-Marxism, cultural Marxism, Frankfurt School, and it's what Lenin referred to as useful idiots. And a useful idiot in Lenin's world back in the 1917 revolution in Russia is someone who will pick up communist propaganda and spread it like a true believer, not understanding what the purpose of the communist propaganda is. And I think we have a lot of useful idiots here on Guam. Now, I'd like to come up with a better word than that, because calling people an idiot is really not a good way to win hearts and minds. But it's Lenin's term, it's not mine. And it all fits into the same whole communist, neo-Marxist framework. So there are people here on Guam who see themselves as nationalists that are repeating all of the cultural Marxist line as though they were in touch with the Herbert Marcuses of the world, thinking that what they're really doing is advancing the cause of the Chamorro. But what they're really doing is advancing the causes of neo-Marxism and cultural Marxism, if you know what I mean.
Well, in their attack of our local society, what worries me the most is that, and I think I mentioned to you this before, is that I see one of their strategies as looking at their situation as a battle of attrition. The older generation, my mother's generation, who was here during the occupation, people who tend to be more grateful for freedom and appreciate personal freedom, they're dying off little by little. The younger generation, I believe the idea is to indoctrinate them as much as possible through textbooks, through whatever means necessary to grow resentment toward America. And that's what I see happening. Anyway, Bob, thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Thanks for calling, Carl. So long.
All right, thank you.
So another exciting educational episode of Tall Tales. The Real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll talk a little bit about Michael San Nicolas's remarks to the legislature, for sure.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Morning in Iran. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News.